Hi, it's Rob Moore here, and I'm with the lovely Sarah Downs. Sarah and I have become good friends over the last couple of years. She very kindly hired me to speak at her Ducara conference. It was a bit out of my usual territory up north, very north, but we had a great time together. And she has a great podcast called Sales Insights with Sarah. And I'm going to hand over to Sarah now because this is her podcast, her interview, and her show. We're going to talk about building your vast and personal and prolific brand in the corporate space as well as the entrepreneurial space. But I'm an open book and I'm all yours, Sarah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Rob. So hi, everyone, and welcome to the Sales Insights with Sarah podcast. Thank you so much to Rob for giving me some of his valuable time. I know that you're busy and we're always struggling to catch up. So it's great to get us finally on screen together. So today, I would really like to talk about something that just keeps coming up in the consultancy work that I do. And it's something that I don't think that most businesses give enough consideration and certainly don't act on, and that is building a personal brand. And I'm often saying to people that are building out, especially in our world, LinkedIn, that a personal brand is not going to come from sharing your company's content once a week. You know, people want to see who is behind the brand. And I thought about who was in my network, who do I know that has done an amazing job, not only building and scaling business, but having that personal brand as well, which is a fine balance. And hence why I invited Rob onto the podcast. So thank you so much again for joining me. So let's go straight into it, Rob. Why is it so important that business leaders, employees, even people looking for jobs, and for the purpose of the podcast, especially sales and business development people, why is it important that they should build their personal brand?
There's lots of reasons. I think the first thing is no one wants to talk to Coca-Cola on social media. You know, they want to talk to Sarah or Rob or Grant Cardone or whoever. So people want to talk and engage with people online, not companies. That's not to say companies can't have a good social media presence, but on social media, it's a people-based connection. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is because you can generate vast amounts of leads and ultimately clients on social media for low cost or free. Even if you don't have money yet to get into ad revenue, you know, Google, YouTube, Facebook ads, the big three, Amazon, if you've got books and products, the big four. So if you don't have a huge budget to go and grow your company or your personal products and services, then developing leads and interest on social media. The third thing is there's so many people on social media. I think Facebook have as much traffic as Google. I know that they certainly matched them in terms of traffic volume or search volume at one point. So where are all your customers, clients, leads, followers, and fans? They're on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and, dare I say, TikTok and all these other platforms. The next reason is, what if you wanted to sell your company one day? Then if you have a vast personal brand, you can sell your company and you still got assets. So I have, I think it's 1.2 million followers across all my channels. And I was going to say I own them. I don't own them all, and I might come to that in a moment. But if I sold Progressive Property, or if I sold Progressive Success, or if I sold my property portfolio, I still retain all those personal assets. Whereas if I didn't have a personal brand and I sold my company, then I don't retain any personal assets. The next thing is, I think people are now looking in the world we're in for guidance, for leadership. You know, people can go and talk politics and they can have an opinion online and they can build a following. And if you talk sense and you help people and you're a beacon of light and hope and confidence and strategies and tactics, then you are very valuable, and people in their thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions will follow you. They will become a fan of you, and ultimately they will buy your products and services. The next thing is there's a lot of consultants, trainers, coaches, etc. And I think the best way to connect with your kind of clients is developing a personal brand and then following you and consuming your work and knowing a bit about how you're different from your competitors, again, which they wouldn't get that sense or that flavor if you were posting from Progressive Property, which is one of my companies, for example. I think it gives you flexibility to express yourself. So let's say I love Alexander McQueen. I'm wearing an Alexander McQueen jacket. It's just I love art, I love music, I love sort of clothing, fashion, anything like that. I was going to say cultural, but I'm not very cultural. Everyone knows that. But I love all that. Whereas if I started talking about Alexander McQueen and my love for McQueen and the creativity in the brand and that amazing documentary on McQueen that was released a couple of years ago, if I send that out to my Progressive Property database, they'll be like, Rob, what are you talking about? We follow you for property. Shut up. Unsubscribe. Whereas on my social media channels, people follow me. So I can, if I want to get a bit political, if I want to have a bit of a rant, if I want to share my opinion, that's okay. But it wouldn't be okay to, your board members or your corporate brand, which means if you want to change your business model in a few years' time, and if you want to have a bit of freedom, you want to go and vagabond and travel the world and whatever else, then you can document all of that on your social media, and that benefit you and your followers and your fans. There's probably many other reasons, Sarah, but there's 7 or 8.
Yeah, no, they're great, Rob. And I'm already relating to some of those just from the work that I've been doing and learning from people like you over the last few years. And this year, it's been a really tough year for businesses. And my business partner and I, Yukemi as well, our business Dukaru, over 80% of our new business comes through LinkedIn, and it comes to us as personal brands, not to Dukaru's LinkedIn page. So, that's testament, and, we're just a small business, but we're consulting in much larger organizations where we can see this happening as well. You spoke about having your brand as your asset. I'm going to touch on that a little bit later, because I think that's where a lot of business owners, executives get confused at whether that asset is going to confuse matters actually when they get into a sale further down the line. But first of all, let's talk about you. And when did you realize in your career that you should build a personal brand and that was going to be important for the work that you went on to do?
I would say about 5 years ago. Behind me are some of my books, and one of them you can just see on one of the sides, depending on which way your camera is Life Leverage. Now, the anniversary of that book is in about a month, and it's the 5-year anniversary. And I would say it was about that time when I developed a personal brand on a meaningful scale. So I was only ever really known, Sarah, for property. So it was Rob Moore and Mark Homer of Progressive Property. Rob and Mark at Progressive. Rob and Mark are the property guys. They're the young property guys. And that was how Progressive Property was Rob and Mark. And that made us a more personable company, more accessible. But it limited our growth because Rob and Mark can't do everything. And Rob and Mark only have 12 waking hours in the day. And that probably grew us quicker to 3 million turnover. But then it stopped us going to 10 million or 20 million because we bottlenecked our own growth. So about 7 or 8 years ago, I started feeling this, which was like, whoa, every year Mark and I are having to work harder and harder, but the growth is now incremental rather than exponential. And we wanted to change that. And I thought, how can I do that? Well, if I could have trainers training for me, if I could have multiple verticals of, not just a buy-to-let course, but, serviced accommodation and rent-to-rent and joint ventures and commercial property and all these different verticals. But then, of course, the same quandary is like, well, at the moment it's Rob and Mark and everyone wants Rob and Mark. But I figured that out over a process. There was some resistance and a bit of ego getting in the way, or my customers only want to talk to me and none of the trainers be able to train as well as me. And, I disproved that theory. We've got some brilliant trainers who know their strategy better than me, who are more specialist in that than me, and have actually, probably outgrown me in terms of their ability to deliver those trainings. But really, for us to grow, we had to let go. And I'm always saying to entrepreneurs, you've got to let go to grow. So I sat down with Mark and said, we need to change our branding and our positioning. And Progressive Property needs to be a community, not about two, experts who've done well, Rob and Mark, but actually we need to make it about everyone, a collective of our clients, followers, fans, and trainers, make it feel vast and scalable, but warm and personal and not reliant on one person. Because what happens if I decided I wanted to do something else, or Mark became ill for 3 months? Obviously, that would put us in some difficult growth positions. And so the way I pivoted, if you like to do that, was I wrote my first non-property book. So I'd written Property Investing Secrets, Multiple Streams of Property Income, Cash in a Property Crash, Beginners to Winners, all of our case studies in property. But Life Leverage, 5-year anniversary in a month, that was my first non-property book. So now I'm telling the world, Rob isn't just a property guy. He can help you with business, with leverage, with scale, with getting VAs, with hiring staff, with leveraging social media, with building a personal brand, with outsourcing. And all of a sudden, okay, Rob isn't just a property guy. And then we did the same with Mark. We gave him sort of a different brand, although he's more into property than me. So people still really see Mark as, the big property developer, the big property converter. But not really the guy you go to learn buy-to-lets. And Mark wrote Low Cost High Life and then Uncommon Sense. So again, he's Mark. We're branding Mark as a business owner entrepreneur. We're branding me as an entrepreneur and someone who's got a good personal brand. Now, of course, you have to be those to brand yourself as those, and we were those. It's just your market only knows what you are from what it can see. So you could be more than what your market sees. And Mark and I were more than just property people. But there was various reasons we wanted to do this. Number one, I actually more enjoy entrepreneurship and business holistically than just the niche of property. 2, we wanted to grow from 3 million to 10 million to 20 million to 50 million in our training companies. And we wanted less reliance on us personally. So I wrote that book, and pretty much about a week after, I launched the Disruptive Entrepreneur podcast. So now anyone who knew finds Rob 5 years ago, they're like, Rob Moore wrote Life Leverage. Rob Moore's got a podcast called The Disruptive Entrepreneur. He must be an entrepreneur. And of course, that's what all my content is now. And then, of course, if you exaggerate that over time to now, I've written Money, Start Now, Get Perfect Later. I'm Worth More. In fact, Reinvent Yourself with Gerald Ratner that I co-wrote just came out today. I broke world records in public speaking. I mentor many successful millionaires and celebrities. So now I'm not even really known for property by most people. And at that same time, I realized that the best way to get that message out to the masses was by developing a personal brand. So one, I'm sending the message to the market, and 2, all the new followers, all the new customers, all the new clients, all the new people putting notifications on your computer, all the new people coming in, they're following me for something different. And now what we have is the asset of progressive property, which is, look, it depends on how you value it. But that could be worth, dare I say, 25, 30 million pounds as a company. If I think about the profit we'll make this year and the price to earnings ratios, that's fairly realistic. And that doesn't even need Mark or I. Operationally, strategically, maybe some nice ideas, but we don't run any of the training courses for progressive property. We don't write the books in property anymore. And then we have Progressive Success, which is a business and personal development training company. And I've got my public speaking trainer, my e-commerce trainer, my Shopify trainer. And again, that company's worth a little bit less, but still decent capital value in that. So then we have my personal brand. And then, I could launch any number of new products and services to my personal brand. And then we have Mark's. So 5 years ago, I started to implement it. 7 or 8 years ago, I probably started thinking I've got to get into this space. I like variety. So I wanted that ability to pivot and be flexible. And if I wanted to do a live in my bed or, I wanted to have a little bit of a rant about something I felt strongly about that wasn't about property, I needed to take that away from all of our customers and have people following me who they know that's what they get from me. And you can be much more honest and more open and more you when you develop your personal brand.
Yeah, it reminds me of when I introduced you at Ducari Con, the conference in March. And when we started marketing that you were going to be one of the speakers, there was quite a lot of people in our network that didn't know you, but the ones that did know you knew you for your podcast and knew you as the disruptive entrepreneur. And that was obviously the brand that we pushed you as. And I remember after Ducari Con, because you'd spoken about, you'd gone really personal, you shared a lot of really deep personal content. And then they found out everything else you did, that you're a best-selling author, that you had really successful businesses, you were an investor. they actually were commenting, so that's great that, you know, you can have all that going on around you, but still come to an event and focus on you personally. And of course, the story of how you've built businesses came through that. But I do remember standing on that stage, introducing you, and you walking up, sort of sitting on the stool and just going quiet. And the room was just like waiting to see what would happen. And within about 3 minutes, I remember looking at Kieran just nodding, because you just had them captured. But it was not because you were standing up there telling them about all your achievements. It was because you got super personal very quickly, and you were relatable. And I think that's something else a personal brand really helps us to be, is relatable to our network. But sharing personal content is very uncomfortable for a lot of people. Is that something that you struggled with at the start, Rob, or is it, and that you've managed to overcome? Does it get easier in time? What advice would you give to people that are absolutely terrified about talking, you know, about themselves really instead of the business?
Yeah, I think the more self-awareness you have, the better. So why building a personal brand really works for me is I like variety. So the talk I gave for you, Sarah, at Dakaru, I'd never given before, and I probably won't give again in that same way. Obviously, you saw me at Nick James Expert Empires.
Yes.
You hired me based on that, but you saw a very different talk. So you saw me in there, very gregarious, you know, quite in their face. You know, I think you won't mind me saying, but you know, I had him in fits of laughter, and I was a bit ranty and shouty, and then of course I come up to you and talk a lot about mental health and, you know, the suffering that a lot of people have in silence, and how that's rife in entrepreneurship and business, and how we need to speak up about that. And so I like variety. And I know that about myself, which is why the personal brand fits. I mean, my books, Money, Start Now, Get Perfect Later, Life Leverage, Reinvent Yourself, I'm Worth More, you know, there's the variety there. Now, if you don't like variety and like to do the same thing over and over again, having awareness of that, and that's actually quite a good thing, because you can actually become the best known for that. Like, I'm probably quite diverse, and that probably affects my ability to be very best in one niche. So self-awareness of who you are, and then it's the courage to show that version of yourself to the world. I don't think people want to see a guarded, walled, surrounded version of you. They don't want over salesmanship. I don't think they want over humility or under humility. They don't want arrogance. They don't want over humility. They call it the humble brag. People just want you. They want the real you. And to me, that's easy, because I don't really have a filter. I don't really adapt to different situations. I'm just kind of me. And when you see me on stage and off stage, I'm pretty much exactly the same. My language, my dress, you know, whereas some people, they're on stage, they dress differently, they dress so smart, they come off stage, they loosen everything, they start swearing. So I've always found it important to show the world who you really are. Now, I think to do that, you have to have the courage to be disliked. You have to accept that you're going to get criticized. And you have to own both your strengths and weaknesses equally. And I think I've got better at that over the years. You know, I have many weaknesses, but actually my strength is linked to those. Like, I'm very impatient, and that's a strength and a weakness. But I always like to put it down in black and white. What's my biggest fear? So is my biggest fear how I might be judged being honest on social media? Or is my biggest fear the success and the growth and the progress I won't have if I don't? And really, that's what it boils down to. What's your biggest fear? What's the worst that's going to happen? You'll get called to see you next Tuesday. I've had that a few times. Someone threatened to go and have sexual intercourse with my wife if I didn't stop doing my videos on social media. And this was just all in the last 2 or 3 days. I interviewed Jordan Peterson, put a photo up online about it, got criticism for that. So people will hate about you what's great about you. They will judge you anyway. You're going to be judged no matter what. So you might as well be yourself. And I'm going to finish on one thing for this question, Sarah, because I think it illustrates the point well. I hear a lot of people, because I mentor thousands of people, not all at once, by the way, but I have over the last 15 years. And a lot of people are open about their personal struggles with me, because I'm that kind of entrepreneur where I'm honest about that. So I attract that. And a lot of people say to me, Rob, I just want to be loved and appreciated for who I am. But the problem is they're not showing the world who they really are. They're showing the world an overinflated or an under-subordinated version of themselves. So if you puff yourself up or subordinate yourself down, you are showing the world a false version of who you are. Therefore, you're going to attract a false version of who you want to attract. So the only way you attract the right clients, the right friends, the right partner is to show the world who you really are. And then you attract people who like you for who you really are. But when you show the world who you're really not, then you attract the kind of clients and followers and even people in relationships who want a version of you that you're not. And then you've got to live up to someone you're not. And this is where, this is where difficulties come. Like, and I know some people think it's a bit ethereal, but really, when you show the world who you really are, you'll attract the right kind of clients for you.
I couldn't agree more. And if I think about all the people that have, I guess, motivated, inspired me to show who I really am, because it's not always been easy for me to do that, then I think they're probably the people that got the most hate. So that's why I was laughing when you were commenting on some of your haters and trolls that you've had over the years. I've seen it, I've seen it on your profiles. We've spoken about it. And I'm going to go to the comments quickly because somebody's left a comment, Mike Scotland, and he's someone that's really worked hard on his personal brand, especially in the mental health space in the last few years. And I know for that, he's had quite a bit of hate as well. And he's asked a great question. For a leader and an inspirational individual, who do you gain confidence from? And what is your go-to for inspiration? So who's inspired you over the years to be yourself?
Okay. So anyone who has overcome hardship, who's had some difficulty in their life, but, has got a smile on their face and is grateful for, the hand they've been given, for me, they inspire me. Mm-hmm. So yes, I could mention I'm inspired by Arnold Schwarzenegger because he was like one of the best in 3 different industries. And that the little chap, Nick Vujicic, who's got no arms and just a little sort of finger for one of his feet. And I think he's spoken in front of 9 million people across the globe. That really inspires me. But the mum who's struggling to raise 3 kids and start and scale her business. Or Malcolm, a lovely client of mine, who's both his dad and his son died through COVID. My good friend Matt, whose dad passed away getting COVID when everyone was saying that COVID, doesn't kill anyone, don't worry about it. Well, it took his dad. So all of these people inspire me. So real human stories inspire me. Alexander McQueen probably inspired me probably the most, which is one of the reasons I'm really into the fashion brand. But, the artistic flair and genius and courage to be disliked and put your work out there knowing that, you're going to polarize people and that's okay. In fact, if you don't polarize people, you're probably not strong enough with the volition of your work. So, I've mentioned 2 or 3 sort of semi-famous or inspirational leaders there, and I've mentioned just everyday people. Sarah, I got to know you, and obviously I know you've had some trauma in your life, and you really inspire me how, you've built strength from that and overcome that. So I really believe that you can learn something from everyone. And there's a book called The Courage to be Disliked, which talks about vertical or horizontal based relationships. And the vertical ones are the hierarchical ones where you've got the president of the United States all the way down to the janitor. And, the concept of that book and the Adlerian psychology from Adler is the opposite of that, which is horizontal relationships, whereby we're all equal, we're just all doing different jobs. And, in the past, because we've been to school and looked up to teachers, or, we've looked down to people who we perceive are lower on us on the social hierarchy, that kind of gets drummed into us by society. But I actually think a far more balanced, wise, and enjoyable way to live life is to see everyone on a horizontal plane. You and I do different things, Sarah. I should neither over pedestalize you up there, go, wow, you are my idol, and I should not subordinate you down there and look down on you like I'm better. If I treat you as an equal, I'll learn from you and you'll probably learn from me. And if I see everyone as an equal, I'm learning from everyone. Because, some people say, oh, well, you shouldn't listen to anyone unless they've done it and they've got loads of experience. Actually, I'm not sure that's good advice. I think try and learn something from everyone. We've all got a story. We've all been through something, and we can all learn from everyone. So actually, you can be inspired by everyone. If you take time to listen to them and their stories and their pain and their struggles, you're like, whoa, you are quite some human being. And then you look at yourself in the mirror and go, wait a minute, I'm the same. So I'm quite some human being. I'm not bad either. So really, it's a belief in humanity. Like I always think that to get confidence in yourself, believe in humanity. Because if you believe that we can explore the universe and we can run the 100 meters in 9.8 seconds, and we can achieve all these amazing feats. Well, a human did that, and I'm a human too, on the same level as every other human being. So that means I have this potentially limitless potential, and then that inspires me to go out and live and be that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for what you mentioned. I know that we've spoken quite a lot about both of our pasts and what drives us every day. But for those that are, I guess, just starting to share something personal, starting to really be seen, be heard, they're going to get some haters. And I know the more I do it, the more hate I get, whether that is, online, whether it's behind closed doors and you just hear about it. I've got a pretty thick skin now, so yeah, whatever. But there's a lot of people that don't, and they're still building the resilience, exactly. So for those individuals, I guess, what advice would you give them on dealing with the trolls, dealing with the haters? Keep that belief in themselves, keep striving forward, keep the drive. Don't let these crappy comments and shitty, reports that go out and online to really knock them back. And I think it's important that we all get those knockbacks, because it's what helps. Well, I personally feel it's what helps me to keep going, actually, because I'm the sort of person, if you tell me I can't do something, I'll go, you just wait, I'm coming for you, sort of thing. But it does take resilience. And I think, like you'd mentioned, I've been through some trauma, and I think that's really helped instill that resilience within me. But there's some people out there that haven't necessarily been through the things yet in their lives that are going to build that resilience, and they're just getting started. So what advice would you give them?
Right. There's a short answer and a long answer to this. Okay. And I'm going to try and pitch it somewhere in the middle, because there's many different ways of dealing with criticism. First thing we need to do, Sarah, is define it, because people misdefine it. So there's critics, there's trolls, there's haters, there's punks, there's wanks, but really there's critics, trolls, and haters. And you need to know which is which. Because what a lot of people do is they get a critic and they make out that they're a hater or a troll. And all you'll do is turn the critic against you. So a lot of people are like, yeah, fuck the haters. Yeah, fuck the haters. Well, actually, they're building a rod for their own back, because actually they're being very blasé and, categorizing everyone into this box of being a hater. But not everyone's a hater. If someone challenges your viewpoint, if they disagree with your opinion, that doesn't make them a hater. So a critic is someone who disagrees with you or gives you feedback in an area that you can improve. Now, they don't always say it elegantly. Sometimes they're rude, and sometimes they're blunt, and sometimes they're hurt, and sometimes they're angry, and sometimes they're defensive. But what they're doing is giving you constructive feedback. Now, your wisdom needs to be able to go, is that constructive feedback, and is that something I can learn from? So if someone takes the piss out of my haircut or the way I speak, or just tries to have a pop at everything I do without any volition, there's no criticism in there. There's no feedback. That's trolling or hate. Now, you must not disown or publicly attack critics. You should listen to them and you should learn from them. and you should not take it personally. I.e., the critic has said, you can improve in this area, but they've not said, who you are is wrong.
Yeah.
A hater is someone who is hating on you probably because they hate themselves, probably because they're experiencing their own pain and trauma, probably because they failed at what you're trying to do, probably because you've triggered them from their own past and their own baggage. You can turn a critic into a fan. It's very difficult to turn a hater into a fan. You'll get 1 in 10, but most of them want to hate on you regardless, and they'll hate on everyone like you. They just put you in this box. With those, you're best off ignoring, blocking, deleting, banning, and just moving on from. Trolling is illegal. Now, a troll is someone who, through a fake profile, is trying to defame you, to bring you down, to ruin your reputation, etc. They should be reported to all social media channels. If you can find the IP address, they should be reported to the police, because trolling is an offense. It's illegal, and people have committed suicide from being trolled. So they're the 3 different categories. Now, in reality, if you want the quick answer, ignore it. Ignore it. Because someone tagged me into a post today of someone trying to criticize me, but what they tried to criticize me of, they criticize everyone who does what I do. Now, I'm just grateful to be in the conversation. That means I'm, one of the big players, because if I wasn't in the conversation, I wouldn't be one of the big players. And they're after me every few days trying to bring something out, because I'm the biggest player. So, I should take that as a bit of a compliment. But if anyone tags me in, or if they're just block, delete, ignore, block, delete, ignore. It's like a parallel universe where, a load of the critics. By the way, I was going to say a load of my haters, but they're not my haters. They're just haters, because they don't just hate me. They hate everyone else. And they'll wrap it in their white knight, and they'll elevate themselves of superiority of what they're trying to do for our industry and everything else. When they're trying to sell their own shit or get traffic to their own YouTube channel, they've got their own ulterior motive. They always have, or they've done worse in the past, or they've got a shady history. It's just classic. But this parallel universe goes on. Like someone said to me, Rob, they're always having a go at you in that group. And I'm like, oh, are they? And they're like, yeah. I was like, oh, nice. I have no idea about it. I have no desire to go and look. If I go and look, I always say to people who look at stuff online and read it, did that make you feel better? Because 99% of the time it doesn't make you feel better. Whereas if you don't know it exists, can it hurt you? No. So an easy thing to do is to just ignore. Now, like I said, when you know the definition of critic, troll, hater, hater, block, delete, hide, ban, unfriend, unfollow, troll, report. Now, a critic, you could get involved and you could create a debate and a discussion, and maybe you could learn something from them, and maybe they could learn something from you. Now, when you publicly engage with critics and you are elegant, you are unemotional, you are respectful, and you are kind, you win over loads of fans. So actually getting criticized online is a great opportunity to win over loads of fans. Even if it's unfair, even if they get a bit shirty and a bit shitty with you, you remaining calm and balanced publicly shows the world, that you're a leader. And then the final thing, and I would say this is, with experience, you can have a bit of banter with them. So if I get trolled and criticized, my haters often make spelling mistakes, which is quite convenient. So I'll often correct them on their spelling, or ask them to define some words. Like I got called a bitch licker and a dick rider. I don't really know what a bitch licker is, so I asked them to sort of explain the definition of that. And you can have a bit of a laugh. Life is short. And I think it's really important to take your work seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. We've got one life, maybe, and I want to have fun and I want to enjoy it. And, no one who's had a bad day or who's living a bit of a shitty life, who wants to take their shit out on me, it's going to ruin my day. No fucking way. In fact, I'm going to turn your day around and I'm going to shine some sunshine on you. And if you still want to stand in the pissing rain, then fuck off.
I think taking that back to more of a, business example as well, because I think a lot of people assume that to have a big personal brand profile and have haters, that you have to be some sort of celebrity, guru, expert, with thousands upon thousands following you, which is not the case. I don't have, I think I've got about 8,000 people on LinkedIn. It's not massive, it's not small, but it's not huge. But there's been times, even in the last few months, I can think of where I've had CEOs of companies reaching out to me purely because they've read something I've written on the wrong day, they've taken it the wrong way, they'll, I guess, approach me or attack me for that. And usually I'll go back and let them know what I was actually trying to say, whether sometimes that takes a voice note or something instead of written messages. And quite often, actually, probably 99% of the time, I've turned it around and we're having a coffee the following week. Yeah. And some of them have become clients. Yeah. So I think I'm really good at probably my ex-nursing days, realizing that, you know, everyone is emotional sometimes and you can trigger people with what you say, but it's more their problem than it is yours. And I really try hard not to own somebody else's shit. Yeah. Unless obviously I believe I have done something wrong, then I will, you know, openly speak about that and apologize. That's different. But I think, you know, what I want to say to the listeners is, don't think that just because you're going to be building personal brand in the business space and you're going to have a small network, that this might not happen to you. You know, you don't have to be a Rob Moore to get haters. It will happen. So I think it's really good to speak about it and be prepared for it, rather than, and be self-aware, like Rob said, being self-aware of how you're feeling on a particular day at a particular time and how you're responding to things is also really important when building your personal brand, because once it's out there, right? So yeah. I'm sure you've had a few of those, Rob, where you've written something back and then regretted it, maybe.
Yeah, I'll probably have a few times, not in a very long time, I guess, because I've got a little bit more experienced. You know, I'm at the position now where I'm going to get judged no matter what I do. Whatever I do is going to be wrong to some fraternity. But, you know, I believe everything has an upside and a downside. So to me, that's just the natural law. You know, people will hate about you the very thing that's great about you. So, yeah, look, just expect it. And just, you know, what a lot of people do when they set goals or they go into something new, they get excited. Oh, I'm going to make this amount of money and I'm going to have this amount of clients and I'm going to get this amount of freedom. What they don't do is the opposite of goal setting, which is fear setting, which is what could go wrong and what's going to come along the way and what's the cost to me going to be. You know, when you're an entrepreneur, the cost is, you know, late nights, weekends. Sometimes you don't see your family as much. Well, the cost of having a personal brand is judgment online, judgment, criticism, trolling, hate. But like you said, and we'll just leave it at that, is it reflects on them, not you. And you know, people don't expect you to be perfect and people don't expect you not to get criticized, but they are watching to see how you deal with it. So all public online criticism is a way for you to show the world what you're about. Often if and when I'm responding to critics, trolls and haters, I'm actually not responding to them. I'm responding to everyone else who's watching.
Yeah. No, great point. And that actually leads me on well to the next question, Rob. You speak about fear. So when I've spoken about building personal brand with so entrepreneurs, business leaders that have really scaled or they're in the process of scaling really quickly. So that could be going from 2 people to 150 in a year. You know, so it's not just adding a few members to the team. And they usually are on an exit strategy. You know, they're working towards an exit. And there's this fear that by building a personal brand, that could get in the way, because at the same time as building the personal brand, they're also trying to not be the face of the company and the main brand of the business, because they want to be able to sell this asset. So you spoke before about your personal brand being the asset, but do you feel like it's ever gotten in the way, maybe not so much for yourself, but other companies that you've supported and mentored, where getting that, striking the balance of having a personal brand and trying to also come away from being the brand of your business, ready to sell it?
Yeah, I think any answer is it depends on context. So if you have a vast personal brand and you're coming under attack and you're getting heavy criticism, or you're loose with your words and, you know, you're controversial, that could leak over into the reputation of your company, and that could affect the valuation and the reputation of the company. Yes, it could. But did Steve Jobs, who had a personal brand, did that hurt Apple? I think it probably helped Apple. Now, there are 3 main types of brand. There's the personal brand, the company brand, and the product brand. And I decided many years ago that I actually wouldn't mind having all three, or at least two of three. You don't have to have one. So there's Apple, which is the company brand. There's Steve Jobs, which is the personal brand. And then there's the iPod or the iPad or iTunes, which is the product brand. You can have all types of brand. I'd probably argue if you had multiple brands, Jordan, Nike Air Jordan is a brand of Nike.
Yeah.
You've probably got more assets. So what I didn't say, let's just be clear, is your personal brand is the asset. I said your personal brand is an asset. It's one of the assets. Because on the other side of the coin, my friend Neville Wright sold Kiddie Care, sold it for nearly 100 million quid. And the management firm that was selling it for him said, when the buyers come in, you need to not just be not in the, the warehouse, you need to be on holiday in another part of the world. And he was like, why? And he said, because if they see you around, they'll assume that you're required operationally. Whereas if you're not here through the whole process, they'll hopefully rightly assume that you're not required, because if Neville is needed operationally, it reduces the value of the company. So, you could argue if you have a completely personal brand and it's not nothing to, well, it will be something to do with the company because you own the company, but the company doesn't rely on you as a personal brand. You could argue your company is more saleable and has more value, doesn't have to retain you for 2 or 3 years. You won't have to do an earn out deal. You could just do a straight sale deal. But of course, let's think of someone who's controversial at the moment. If David Icke or Katie Hopkins, were trying to sell a company for 100 million, obviously they're controversial, and what they say and do might affect the value of their brand. Yes,
absolutely. So for me and for our business, I'm always thinking about how do we get our employees to also build their personal brands and support them in doing so. And I think this is something that businesses are also, going back to the fear, they're almost scared of their employees building personal brands and showing that they have interests in other areas. Maybe they're involved with different businesses. Maybe they have a side hustle that they want to talk about. And I think that's a great thing, because if you're a business leader and you want to get to the point where you can sell your business and that investor knows that you do not have to be part of it for it to succeed, is the more people in the business with personal brand that can be online talking about your business from time to time, the stronger that case is. Why do you think it is that so many employers, don't encourage their team? Do you think it's purely down to they don't understand the importance of it yet, which is one of the reasons we're doing this podcast, Rob? Or do you think it's more around the fear of what that may mean for them?
I think it could be both. Let's be honest, every business owner or employer has experienced at times their staff wasting time on social media, and we might not want to encourage that. But I think it depends on, do you come from a place of scarcity or abundance, of control power or power via autonomy, which are different. So I try my best to create a culture in my organization of power via autonomy, not power via control. And what I mean by that is my power in keeping a staff member is that they love their job, not that I've got them on some leverage or, a clever clause in the contract. And relationships and the strength of the relationships you have with people, that's more power and security for you than it is bombs in contracts or people only really working with you because you've got something over them. So I encourage all my staff to be very active on social media and trust that they won't waste their time and mess around. Now, how do you trust? And because you've got to feel comfortable that they're not going to build their own brand and then leave you. Well, you could take it personally if they develop their career and leave you. That's not necessarily, we're all ships in the night to a certain degree, aren't we? Mm-hmm. But for me, the power is in the culture and people enjoying coming to work and me not having fear-based control over them. Now, if my staff members build good personal brands, then that's going to be better for lead generation. So I'm going to benefit from that. Now, if I'm smart as a business owner, I've got good KPIs to monitor and track the effectiveness of each employee's role. So I would rather they're managed by data than they're managed by people. And I don't mean that's abdication of management, But I don't really care what my team do if they hit their targets and their quotas. Someone was talking to me about this, a client I mentor. He was like, how do you get over that needing to be really busy all the time to feel like you've had a good day and to feel like you're working properly? And I said, you've got to think about effort versus outcome. And at school, on your report card, you had an effort score and a grade score. But in reality, the grade score is the only one that's important.
I just had a talks too much score all the time. Hard. Sarah talks too much.
Must try harder. That was mine. Yeah. So does it matter how you get the A? I would argue it doesn't. All right, maybe you shouldn't cheat, but here's the irony. If my son, from time to time, he gets on FaceTime with his mate at school, and sort of his mate helps him with his homework. And Jim's like, oh, you can't do that, my wife. And I'm like, that's good leverage. I like that thought process. So all right, look, I know people are going to disagree with me or some of them, and that's fine. Everyone's entitled to my opinion. But how does it matter how you get the result? If I've got a 15 grand a week revenue target for my sales team, and someone does 20 grand a week, as long as they're not breaking the law and they're not breaking their contract, does it matter how many calls they do? Well, no, not really. They may prepare better. They may take much longer on the call. And so for me, it's about output. And well, actually, it's about results. I've always said that to my staff. So if you've got KPIs measuring their results, and of course, you know, for sales team, you're going to track number of calls inbound, number of calls outbound, average duration per call, average number of calls per sale, average duration of calls per sale, all of that stuff you're going to track. But really, do they do the sales or not? And if they do the sales and they deliver and they're on Facebook a bit longer than you'd like and whatever else, well, then let them. I've always been a fan of letting people be themselves a bit. I mean, people have got to buy into your culture, of course, but you don't want a load of automatons, a load of robots, a load of mini-me's. Our ego wants that, but you don't want that. So I interviewed Nolan Bushnell, who wrote the great book, Hiring the Next Steve Jobs. He also founded Atari. And he says, embrace weird. He used to have someone who he said was brilliant. It was a man, and he used to come to work in a ball gown every day. And he was like, I loved it, because most people wouldn't allow that. This was, 20, 30 years ago. It'd probably be like a bit more accepted now. But everyone else will reject that. Therefore, this person doesn't have opportunities. And because he embraced it, he found a little bit of a genius. He said there was one staff member who had to take his shoes and socks off all the time when he was doing his work. And so embrace a bit of weird, embrace a bit of people being individuals, have KPIs and the metrics and the key result areas and the minimum standards of performance that they've got to hit. Because you can't have a load of, you can't embrace weird and everyone not get their job done. You've got to get the job done. But allow them to get the job done in their way as long as it's culture fit, and kind of get out of their way and let them flourish,
Yeah, no, there's some great points, and hopefully, I'm thinking even of our team. We've definitely got some weird, including the directors, probably more so the directors. And if anyone joined our team tea breaks that we've been doing on Zoom every day this year, they'd see the weird. But you're right. It's about letting people thrive in an environment and being themselves. And as long as the work's getting done, they're hitting the KPIs, then that's okay. So we've spoken a lot about building brand, personal brand, and how that can support whether you're an entrepreneur, a business leader, how it can support you to build it as an asset. So if you want to change what you do in a few years' time, I know it helps a lot of people that are in sales and business development type roles, because people get to know them and people buy from people. And I also see it helping people that are looking for work right now. I know a number of people that have got a job this year purely by building their personal brand, and people just reaching out and saying, I want to work with you, I want to hire you, without seeing the CV. So it's really powerful. It's really powerful within our careers, but it also helps us do a lot of good. And I know, Rob, that you have been very generous with your time and money to a number of charities over the years. And I wondered how much easier, I guess, it's been to be involved with charities and different organizations, really leading that through your personal brand rather than progressive. Because I see it a lot with entrepreneurs that have multiple businesses, and okay, you can give so much through business, but I think when you have a personal brand and a personal following, and I'm just thinking about some of the, I guess, campaigns that you've done this year using the network that you have, that may have been harder to do if you hadn't built that personal brand.
Yeah, I think so. People follow you and they like your work and they get benefit, and they look forward to tuning into your lives, and you're their regular hit of caffeine and all of those things. So yeah, I want to use my platform to do good as well as I do to do my work. Now, I'm not one that's a campaigner for political causes per se, or these petitions. It's not really how I use my influence and following. Nothing wrong with that, but that's just not really my brand. But yeah, I've raised money for people's life-saving operations. I've done that a few times, and you've done a few little crowdsourcing campaigns where I've asked my following to donate to certain causes, and I'll continue to do that. And I think that in some ways is a responsibility of people who've built a good following and have got good influence. I am more and more as I get older. I'm 41 now, Sarah. And I think that kindness and helping others and using your platform for good, not just for your passion or your profession, I think that's important. Yeah. And I think it pays you. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But I just got made board member for the Prince's Trust. And so I'm doing a Young Entrepreneurs Summit on February the 6th. So that's a new campaign that I'm doing to hopefully raise a good amount of money for both my foundation and the Prince's Trust. And I raised some money for people to develop their business plans. One lady who's developing an app to keep kids safe, who her son got murdered when he was just 3 by her husband. So obviously she had massive trauma. And one lady, I've invested in her developing a children's book, who her brother and her dad died pretty much simultaneously. And of course, that really affected her children. And she wants to help overcome sort of parental trauma and loss through her children's stories. These are all brilliant, business models that also matter and are meaningful. And I want to put my influence behind some of those campaigns as well as, I think helping people start and scale as entrepreneurs, young, underprivileged, and anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur, I think that's meaningful work. I'm not selling sugar, which, it's different. There's a moral dilemma there. I don't feel there's no moral dilemma for me in what I do. Mm-hmm. But still, I can use it for, I raised money for the NHS, raised, I think it was 15 grand, when they were doing all the clapping campaigns. So yeah, it's a nice thing to do, and it feels good, and I want to do more of it.
I think it's something that helps us all. When you become a business owner, depends on what drives you. It depends on your purpose, your why. And I know that for myself, as you know, I used to be a nurse. I had to leave nursing due to medical reasons. And when I first came out into business, I felt like I had maybe lost my purpose because I wasn't being able to help people in the same way on that personal level. And it took me a few years to realize that I could do that in business. I could do that through giving back out with the business by building more of this personal brand. And I think it's something that really helps entrepreneurs, especially where they maybe feel like, am I doing this for the money? Am I getting greedy, and feel like they're coming away from their purpose, to kind of ground them a little bit as well. And it's just so rewarding, and knowing that you can use what you've built to give back. So congratulations on your new role with the Prince's Trust. That's great. And I just wanted to end the podcast on that note, because, building personal brand for a business, yes, that's important, but I want everyone to think about what can you also do with your personal brand to give back to the world, whether that's in your local community, whether it's further afield. I don't think it matters. You'll find what's right for you. So thanks for sharing that with us, Rob. And thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. Obviously, we're on your channels as well, but for the sake of my followers, can you please let us know where the best places are for everyone to follow you and connect going forward?
Sure. So my podcast is called The Disruptive Entrepreneur. You'll find that on any channel. And if you want to follow me, just search my name, Rob Moore, Moore, into pretty much any search engine or social media platform. I do lots of lives on Facebook, pretty prolific on most of the channels. Got a decent YouTube channel with lots of content on there and lots of interviews I've done. So yeah, I'm pretty much out there.
Yeah, easy to find. And also, I know it was supposed to happen this year, Rob, but I've got a lot of a big percentage of my network are in the US. And I know that you and a few of the guys in your team were meant to be traveling the US and doing some podcasts, interviews over there. So do you know when that's happening yet? Any idea? And if not, for all my US based network, please watch this space going forward.
Unfortunately, COVID scuppered that. We were going to go and do an America tour, get a Winnebago and go and drive around America and do loads of podcast interviews and maybe a few seminars, but that'll have to wait. So hopefully we could get that done towards the end of 2021 or early 22. But obviously, you can listen to my podcast and get my books. I've written lots of books, Money, Reinvent Yourself, which launched today. You can get them on Amazon and you can get them in most countries.
Fab. Thank you so much, Rob. And thank you to everyone for listening as well.
Pleasure. Thank you.